Demo discs are a concept that was truly ahead of its time. A disc that held various demos for upcoming games, all in one package, of your choosing. Games that allow the player to get a taste of what is yet to come, picking favorites that capture their interest, that they knew they'd be receiving their allowance money for as a kid, growing up in the 90s. It was one of the coolest and most ingenious ways to capture the consumer's interest to experience various genres of games that introduce someone to something new that they may have never heard of before. But on one fateful night, one out of many of these games that you're introduced to just so happens to be this title called Silent Hill, one of the most unforgettable and most important survival horror games in history. It did so many new things that were unheard of at the time that you can't help but just be amazed at what it accomplished. Back then, imagine many people discovered this game one day by just scrolling down the aisle at your local Toys R Us, Circuit City, or Blockbuster, only to discover this game by chance. But there are also those few who discovered Silent Hill through a demo disc, which is what today's topic of discussion will be about. Today, I'll be looking at 4 rare demo discs of Silent Hill, the USA, Europe, and Japan versions that are specific to the region. There are differences between all these versions, with the changes in the details being very minor and requiring the utmost attention to compare side by side. I'll be evaluating all these notable differences I could discover and talk about the interesting changes between each version with censored content, missing audio, or replaced features missing from the final version. The earliest demo disc the USA received of Silent Hill was a build from 1998, with the release of the official US PlayStation Magazine number 16, January 1999. While it was released in January 1999, it's important to note that the actual build in which the demo was completed was on October 10, 1998. The second released US demo disc of Silent Hill is called Silent Hill Demo CD, released on January 16, 1999. For the sake of confusion, we'll be calling them Demo 98 and Demo 99. Starting the demo brings you a very cozy and chill drive-in theater featuring 16 demos. When selecting Silent Hill, it features a control scheme, allowing the player to familiarize the controls before starting. When booting into the game, we get the title screen with Silent Hill in the trial version underneath in a small font. We have the option to select Scene 1, Scene 2, or Option. The option is drastically different as it lacks Harry's render model that you typically find accompanied by a black background. Here, we have a blue hue on the top and bottom, along with a ton of customability to the options. However, only 4 of the highlighted options are accessible, while the options in the blue font are inaccessible. Scene 1 is the introduction of the game, where we see Harry awaken from his car crash, landing him in Old Silent Hill. While in gameplay, where Harry tries to find Cheryl, there is no audio recording of the voice actor for Harry while the text shows. It is only accompanied by the ambience. When it switches to the FMV cutscene with a zoom in on Cheryl, it plays a jingle sound, which is never in the final version. While following Cheryl, we have a slight pause which shifts the camera angle towards Cheryl running into the back alley. Typically, this has an overhead aerial shot facing down on Harry in the final version. As you enter the back alley, the corpse lying on the ground is not interactable, lacking any text dialogue from Harry where he typically gives comments when interacting with objects in the environment. This is also seen in the nightmare sequence as you cannot get a comment from Harry when you try to interact with the objects. In the cutscene with Sybil Bennett, it too lacks any dialogue from the voice actors, instead showing the text on the screen of their dialogue. When picking up the knife, this is typically seen as the kitchen knife. However, in Demo 98, it is referred to as the petty knife. One very huge difference is the map you pick up on the counter. It's missable, but when you take a glance and speculate it, it lacks a lot of detail which is seen missing from the map in the final version. Also, Bachman Street is referred to as Pullman Street. When getting the radio and encountering the air screamer, Scene 1 ends with a "coming soon" at the end, featuring Dahlia Gillespie in the background. Scene 2 features the sections of Midwich Elementary School and Nightmare School. You essentially do the same process as you would in the final version of the game, solving the puzzles to unlock the medallions to enter the Nightmare School, and find a way out to escape, which is where Scene 2 would end. When you first encounter the Grey Child, they lack audio when approaching Harry, as they would make a laughing sound when in your area to alert you. In the front lobby, there's a book of images sitting on the counter with blood. It's very minor, but the picture on the bottom of two men in suits is changed in the final version to a waterfall. When picking up the chemical on the shelf, it has a background to accompany the item. This would be later cut in the final version. The larval stalker you'd find running and tripping in the hallways is instead replaced by the creepers. Last but not least, the skull map, much like the Silent Hill map you'd find in Cafe 5-2, is missing lots of details in its presentation. The second demo disc from January 1999, formerly known as Silent Hill Demo CD, is the last demo the US received to the public. It features many of the previously seen elements in the previous demo disc, albeit with minor differences that are more so improvements to the overall details in its presentation. While on the topic of the demo disc, I was curious and found an auction of the Silent Hill Demo CD only available on Mercari for $300. It still goes to show how rare and valuable these early versions truly are. Before entering the main menu on Demo 99, you get a lengthy disclaimer explaining to the player that this demo is aimed at a general audience, with mature themes and graphic violence. Konami also wishes the player they enjoy what they have to present in this demo. When in the main menu, Scene 1 and Scene 2 now have been changed to Opening and Battle. In the Options menu, we see a significant change in the background, now having Harry Mason's render, and the UI contains only 4 options this time around. The opening of Harry now features his dialogue, speaking along with the text as he normally does.
Cheryl? Is that Cheryl? Where are you going? Hey, wait! Stop!
This also includes the overhead aerial shot of Harry before entering the back alley to chase after Cheryl. Missing from the previous demo disc was the interactable environment, whereas now we see Harry has dialogue when he interacts with objects in the environment. The cutscene of Sybil Bennett now contains the previously seen missing dialogue, which has now been implemented.
Like I've been run over by a truck. But I'm alright, I guess.
Glad to hear it. You from around here? Why don't you tell me what happened?
Wait a second, I'm just a tourist. I came here for a vacation. I just got here.
The knife you'd find resting on the counter has now been changed to kitchen knife, possibly changed due to the player thinking the petty knife is a useless weapon without much durability to last them, such as when using it in combat. The map for Old Silent Hill has now been updated to contain more details in its presentation, along with fixing Pullman Street to now being changed to Backman Street. The notepad to save is still missing, however, but it's most likely due to this being a demo, which isn't necessary. The battle mode features once again the previously seen Midwich Elementary School and the Nightmare School. However, there are minor differences. When the Grey Children take damage, they now spill out green blood instead of red blood. The same is also applied to Harry when he takes damage. When picking up the chemical, it removes the previously seen background with now just the item. The Larval Stalker is now implemented in Demo 99, removing the creepers previously seen in Demo 98. The map is slightly updated to closely resemble the final version, although it's still missing important details such as the locations of each classroom. For the Silent Hill Japan trial version and the Silent Hill Europe playable demo, I, unfortunately, didn't find many differences compared to the North American version, although I did find minor details that are still different. The main menu for the Japan demo disc, known as Tekkenban, features a different logo compared to the North American version. It has a light green hue as the drop shadow, along with a dark background. Very minor, but the option menu has a gray overlay over the options for the UI. There is also a Japanese text at the bottom, The biggest difference in the Takiban demo is in the battle mode. In the battle mode, they changed the Grey Child, which is now replaced by the Mumbler, an enemy that is typically seen later on in Annie's bar at the Silent Hill Resort area and the sewers. Interestingly enough, the Mumblers replaced the Grey Child entirely in both the Japanese and European versions, because the Grey Child failed to pass censorship as they resembled real-life children due to their design. The biggest issue is that the player has to kill these childlike creatures while in gameplay. If we take a look at the beta model of the Grey Child, it originally looks much more human-like in its appearance. Other than that, that's pretty much all I could find with these early versions of Silent Hill. While the differences found in these regional versions of Silent Hill are very minor compared to the final version, it's still really cool and fascinating to see the subtle differences that you wouldn't come to find unless you compare the early versions and the final version side by side. You wouldn't typically come to realize the existence of these early versions until the birth of the internet and the creation of forums on the subject of Silent Hill back in the early 2000s. Nowadays, it's quite a novelty to experience these versions. If anything, emulate that feeling of having a demo disc from back then. Earlier this year, I made a video detailing the ongoing discoveries of unused and cut content that has been documented so far on the Silent Hill franchise. I took the time to go over the entire series that saw creative and unique concepts which was initially considered but scrapped over time during development. And while that video holds up, I want to go back and redo that video properly this time, with a much more thorough investigation and dig through remotely everything I could find when it comes to cut content. And today, I want to restart this little series of mine on the game that started it all. This will be one of many videos going over the cut content of the Silent Hill series. Today, I will be covering the cut content of Silent Hill 1. Much of the cut content that is found in Silent Hill 1 is sourced from the official US PlayStation Magazine demo disc number 16. It allows the player to play the opening sequence titled Opening, with the nightmare section where Harry encounters the otherworld for the very first time, and then the cutscene of Sybil Bennett introducing herself to Harry in Cafe 522. After, we then have the Battle mode, which serves as the gameplay section, allowing experimentation with the inventory with such items as weapons, health, and other miscellaneous features that accompany Harry. Much of the gameplay section serves as an introduction to Midwich Elementary School, where you would normally progress throughout the final version of the game. However, the minor changes here are how you progress throughout the school itself, and then eventually having to escape. What's fascinating about this specific demo itself is the game files that are found. In the opening screen for the demo, there is a placeholder image with a background of flowers, accompanied by Japanese text that states, "This game contains violent scenes and depictions of grotesque situations." There is an early version of the 11th Street Doghouse memo, which has a black background and green text. In the final version, the background of the image shows pavement with bloodstains, alongside with the 11th Street Doghouse memo, with blue text on torn paper. The "To School" memo contains a black background with a piece of lined paper that has the text "To School" in red crayon, along with a black background. The final version features the same memo appearance, with the exception of having the pavement as the background itself. In the same alleyway with the "To School" memo, you can find Cheryl's sketchbook titled Drawing Block. In the early version, it featured the sketchbook with a black background and Japanese text on the top right of the image. The final version is much the same, although it has a detailed background, which is the pavement floor. In Midwich Elementary School, at the reception area, you can find a desk with a book containing writing and blood. In the demo version, you can see two images that are references to the films Pulp Fiction and Die Hard. In the final version, those images would be unused and replaced with stock images of a waterfall and of mountains. In the school laboratory, Harry would need to find an item called Chemical. In the demo version, it had a background image that accompanied the item itself, along with other chemicals on the shelf. Harry's flashlight beams its light on the item and the surrounding area itself. However, This background image would be later cut in the final version of the game. While on the rooftop of Midwich Elementary School, you would need to find the rubber ball to insert into a hole that would flush water down the drain to receive the classroom key. In the demo version, there was an early image of the rubber ball with rough textures of the water drain, along with the text "dummy still" in the top left corner of the image. This image would later be finalized in the final version with a more detailed background of the rubber ball and Harry's flashlight beaming on it. There's an image with a gray background with text in red that reads "dummy still" on the top left of the image and a green transparent flag on the bottom right hand corner. The next image shows a green background with a white transparent cross to the left and a Japanese text on the right that reads "more light." Another placeholder graphic shows another green background with blue Japanese text on the top that reads "Death is the end of every worldly sore." This is a quote from the novel Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. On the bottom of the placeholder image, it has a Japanese text that states "one image." The Game Over screen had a green background with red text that simply reads "Game Over" displayed. The item screen had the words "item" displayed at the top with a real-life graphic of a Japanese dish called chicken katsu. The following images that are blurred on screen are nude photos of Japanese women, which I'm not going to show for obvious reasons, which were used as placeholders for the save and load screen and the options menu screen. Early renders of Alessa Gillespie, Cheryl Mason, and finally Lisa Garland hold some minor differences in their appearance compared to their final designs. After completing the opening sequence in the demo disc, you get leftovers of images that read "To be continued" and shortly after, "Coming soon," with an image of Dahlia Gillespie inside Balkan Church as she stares ominously at the player. Upon completing the battle mode and successfully escaping Midwich Elementary School, you get a leftover image that reads "To be continued," with a corpse in a wheelchair in the other world. The Konami IP, Track and Field, known as Hyper Olympic in Japan, released a 3D update of a previous version released only in Japanese arcades called Hyper Athlete for the PlayStation. This update would be called International Track and Field, which would be released globally in North America, Europe, and Japan. Much of the textures used in International Track and Field were translated into some of the textures in Silent Hill. In the game files, there are a couple of leftover textures in a folder named Test. These files show textures of hidden doodles from presumably the developers that are of either smiling faces or text in Japanese that are inserted as notes for the staff. This file, SH1THR2001F, contains Japanese text that reads "It's a map." This next file, SH1THR3071F, contains very faint text that reads either "sign" or "billboard." There are approximately 9 unused monsters found within the game files. All of these unused monsters have distinctive qualities in their appearance that are seen as more realistic in terms of real-world design that are completely different from the final monsters we see in-game. The file BTFY, or Butterfly, is of a butterfly-like monster that resembles much of the Fotstinger that you fight atop the post office in Otherworld Central Silent Hill. The file EL, presumably short for Manta Ray, given the appearance of the monster, resembles much of a real-life manta ray. Interestingly, the manta ray is located in the test files, possibly as a placeholder to test out the animations in physics, yet never intended to be an actual potential enemy. The file FRG, or Frog, depicts a monster-like frog with 2 arms in the front and 2 legs in the back. The file MKY, or Monkey, shows a depiction of a monkey with a bloodied mouth and a bruised face with sharp tendrils at the ends of their arms that are also covered with bloodstains. The file OST, or Ostrich, is a huge creature of blood on its mouth and feet. Its most notable quality is considerably the tongue that pokes at the player to deal damage. The file SNK, or Snake, has features resembling a snake. The only notable quality is that of its tongue, which functions similarly to the previously seen ostrich, which also shares a similar function when it comes to dealing damage to the player. The file CHK, or Chicken, depicts a heavily contorted chicken with qualities that resemble that of a newborn hatchling. Interestingly, the chicken has the most applied animations to its model out of all the unused monsters, as it was possibly intended to be featured as a boss fight, given its large, massive size. While the chicken would be scrapped, this would be repurposed for the Air Screamer, as it serves notable similarities, albeit with wings. The file BIG, or Big, is straightforward, as it is a big and large model of a monster that potentially would have served as a boss at some point, given its sheer size and scale. However, it's noticeably lacking in lots of qualities, only supporting a basic texture model, and only having one animation where it disappears completely. Lastly, the file SPD, or Spider, is an unfinished model of presumably a spider given the model's rig, containing 6 legs that are very reminiscent of a spider. Unfortunately, there's only rough looking animations, but no actual model for the spider itself. The monster, Grey Child, an occurring enemy seen in the opening nightmare and the Midwich Elementary School section in-game, had quite an extensive development history when it came to conceptualizing and finalizing the monster. In the first phase, it depicted a childlike monster with human-like skin and black beady eyes with a mouth. In the second phase, it still had a childlike appearance with human-like skin, although the eyes are now removed, only supporting the mouth. The third design would be the final version of the Grey Child that bears lots of similar resemblance to the previous design, although now supports grey-like skin and a smaller head on its model. The reason why the Grey Child went through many redesigns is due in part to having human-like and childlike qualities that wouldn't have passed censorship laws in specific countries or regions globally. Supporting this is also the fact that the player needs to use firearms or melee weapons against the Grey Child. On the topic of the Grey Child, they had an early running animation that saw them skipping towards Harry when wanting to attack and deal damage. The final version shows a lack of a running animation and rather the Grey Child slowly walking towards Harry. The larval stalker also had a human-like and childlike appearance featuring skin on its model. Much like the beta version of the Grey Child, it too went through a heavy revision to remove any and all appearance that resembles that of a human-looking child. The final version of the larval stalker would support a transparent appearance that sees them as a pacifist type of enemy that can't deal damage to the player, nor the player dealing any damage. The beta model of Harry Mason was drastically overhauled compared to the final version. Originally, Harry supported a green sweater as opposed to his iconic brown leather jacket. The beta model also had rough and early animations that are either limited in the model's movement or very experimental to see the possibilities and restrictions that the developers can work with. Speaking of Harry Mason, there are a couple of unused animations that didn't make it into the final game. An early beta model of Sybil exists, although the only notable difference here is in the face and hair texture. The puppet nurse and the puppet doctor had unused beta designs compared to their final counterparts. Typically, there are 3 variations of the respective puppet nurse and puppet doctor, usually seeing a difference in the color of their clothing appearance or facial features and hairstyle. The same is no different with the beta puppet nurses and beta puppet doctors. The takeaway here is that many of the face models in the beta version look far more detailed compared to the final version, which is less detailed. Interestingly, there were earlier beta models that featured a similar looking nurse, but the parasite on the back of the respective nurse or doctor was far smaller in size. An early mock-up of a 3D map conceptualizing the town of Silent Hill is found in the game files. This early build of the town was most likely used as a reference to demonstrate an idea of the town's atmosphere and environment, as well as the size of the player model when roaming the streets of Silent Hill. Much of these early mock-ups of the 3D models in the locations explored throughout the game would actually go unused, yet still exist in the final game itself. For example, if we were to use the Silent Hill level viewer, a mod that ports the 3D maps from the game into the Unity engine, we can access a first-person camera and have free mobility to roam each level. Here, we can see that in the level, Midwich Elementary School, there are a couple of unused maps that were left in the game. The same is also applied to Alchemilla Hospital when exploring out of bounds of the map, with unused 3D models that were textured but scrapped and incomplete. Finally, an unused room with furniture, picture frames, and a symbol of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ is also found in the game files. The difference from the prior 3D models is that this room is noticeably finished with textures in its detail. There's an unused FMV of Cheryl Mason screaming. However, this FMV is an early iteration of the cutscene scene with Harry Mason finding the multiple TV monitors in the Otherworld Silent Hill Town Center. The difference here is that the final version has a black and white overlay with static effects added. In the resort area, Harry can enter a building called Annie's Bar, where he encounters a mumbler attacking Michael Kaufman, saving Kaufman in the process. After this exchange between the two, Harry can undergo an optional side quest that is important to acquire the Good Plus ending. At some point, Harry will end up in the garage of the motel to meet Kaufman once again. What's important about this particular encounter is that in the final version, after Kaufman leaves, Harry has lines that aren't voiced.
Unless you want to die, keep your mind on business. Got it?
However, in the trade demo, a review copy of Silent Hill has Harry's lines that are fully voiced.
Unless you want to die, keep your mind on business. Got it?
This guy's gotta be involved in a local drug racket. Man, is he pissed. In such a rush, too. That was probably dope in the bottle. Anyway, better let him do as he pleases. There's more than my life at stake.
There's an unused audio file titled first/coition.vab that has odd and mysterious sounds that appear seemingly innocent with birds chirping, to slowly transitioning into moaning, to the sounds of someone eating, presumably flesh. While in the main menu, select the Options menu. Next, press either L2 or R2 to activate the extra options. The extra options allow for much more customability towards Harry's movement when it comes to more advanced controls such as weapon, view, retreat, or walk/run. However, the point of interest here is a couple of unique unlockable options that change the gameplay in a significant way. Self-view mode is first unlocked by completing the game at least once, regardless of whatever ending you receive. Once self-view is selected, you must hold L2 to shift to this unique perspective where the camera is locked behind Harry's head, working similarly to an over-the-shoulder camera angle. Bullet Adjust functions as a bullet multiplier, adding additional ammo capacity to each firearm, such as the handgun, shotgun, or hunting rifle. This is unlocked by completing the game at least once, regardless of the ending. By doing so, it unlocks ×1 and ×2. In total, the maximum capacity the bullet adjust is set to is ×6. To reach this maximum bullet adjustment, you must complete the 4 other endings in-game upon each consecutive playthrough. There are approximately 5 endings. Upon completing the game, you can unlock the Next Sphere playthrough. Next Sphere acts as a new game plus, allowing for multiple subsequent playthroughs to unlock different weapons, new difficulty modes, and endings. By starting your next playthrough, you can access 2 previously inaccessible weapons seen in your first playthrough, the chainsaw and the rock drill. To access these weapons, however, you first need to acquire the gas tank, as this is needed to fuel both weapons individually. The gas tank is accessible by entering the garage located next to Hell gas station. Once the gas tank is acquired, it can be used to power either the chainsaw or rock drill. However, the caveat is that you can only power one of these weapons, and you can carry only one of them for the duration of the playthrough. For example, if you choose the chainsaw for the second playthrough, then you would have to play on a third playthrough to use the gas tank again on the rock drill. Unfortunately, not only can you use the gas tank as fuel to properly use these as weapons, but you cannot have these weapons simultaneously in your inventory. However, once on a 4th playthrough, upon using the gas tank on both the chainsaw and rock drill previously, then the gas tank will not be necessary to fuel these respective weapons and instead can be used without it. Both weapons will also be seen in your inventory as opposed to individually. The chainsaw can be found on Block Street in the Cut Right Chainsaw store through a smashed window. The chainsaw acts and functions as a melee weapon that deals significant damage upon using it on the monsters in game by slicing them in half instantly. To turn on and use, hold the R2 button and tap the X button to input standard swings. Alternatively, you can hold the X button to enact a downward slash with a chainsaw. The rock drill can be found on the first floor of the O Ridge control room. The rock drill functions similarly to a firearm. As Harry holds the weapon towards an enemy, he stands still to bait the monster into running into the drill to deal damage to themselves. To use, hold the R2 button and press X to stab enemies with a forward motion to extend its range. The katana can be found in a locked side room in the 11th Street house that is only accessible upon completing the game with a good and bad ending. Once both of these endings have been completed, Harry can enter the previously locked side room in 11th House Street to find a Japanese-themed room with a katana. The katana functions as a melee weapon with significant and heavy damage output that instantaneously kills an enemy upon impact. It has phenomenal range that provides effective distance between Harry and the monsters if used correctly. To use, hold the R2 button to raise the katana and press X to perform standard melee swings. By holding the X button, you can perform a downward slash. A recurring running gag seen throughout the Silent Hill series is the joke ending called UFO ending. Typically, the UFO ending is a secret ending that is unlocked through specific requirements that mostly see the player having to use a channeling stone as a means to contact and summon the Greys, the aliens of the Silent Hill universe, at various locations throughout the story. To unlock the UFO ending, you must complete the game once, then start the game on a second playthrough to find the aforementioned channeling stone in the convenience store 8. Once this item is obtained, you'll have to use it at 5 different locations throughout the story. The first location is the rooftop of Midwich Elementary School during the Nightmare sequence. The second location is the front entrance of Alchemilla Hospital during the Nightmare sequence. The third location is the parking lot at Norman's Motel in the resort area. The fourth location is inside the boat cabin during the Nightmare Resort area sequence. The fifth and final location is at the Lakeside Pier Lighthouse, more specifically at the top of the lighthouse. If done correctly, you'll unlock the UFO ending. Here, Harry makes contact with the Greys, asking them if they have seen a little girl, referencing Cheryl, only to be met with getting incapacitated by a laser gun and held captive as their prisoner. From here, Harry would make subsequent appearances in future UFO endings such as Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3. Upon completing the UFO ending, you get rewarded with the Hyper Blaster. This weapon is set in your inventory once starting a new playthrough after exiting Cafe 522. The Hyper Blaster has infinite ammunition, will automatically lock onto any enemy, has an excellent long range, and deals heavy damage. There are 3 variations of the laser for the Hyper Blaster, dependent on the player's star ranking of their overall high score on the results screen upon completing the game. For example, a 0 to 7 star ranking will reward you with a red laser, an 8 to 9 star ranking will reward you with a yellow laser, and a 10 star ranking will reward you with a green laser. Much of the atmosphere, design, and narrative of Silent Hill 1 are heavily influenced and inspired by the Western pop culture media, such as literature, films, artists, or even authors. For example, many of the street signs you see in Old Silent Hill, Central Silent Hill, and the resort area are based on real-world authors. Bachman Road is a reference to Richard Bachman, a pen name Stephen King used at the time. Block Street is a reference to Robert Bloch. Bradbury Street is a reference to Ray Bradbury. Elroy Street is a reference to James Elroy. Finney Street is a reference to Jack Finney. Matheson Street is a reference to Richard Matheson. Levin Street is a reference to Ira Levin. Midwich Street is a reference to the 1957 novel The Midwich Cuckoos, written by the English author John Wyndham. Midwich Elementary School took heavy inspiration from the movie Kindergarten Cop, more specifically John Jacob Astor Elementary School, filmed in Astoria, Oregon. In Cafe 522, there are a couple of references to various pop culture media. By the notebook to save your game, there's a poster with text that reads, "Study, dammit." This is a reference to a young Stephen King with a shotgun that was taken during his time in college. Next to this poster is the pinball machine Medieval Madness. On the window of the cafe, there is a poster of the 1997 song All Mine by the electronic music band Portishead. Portishead is known to heavily influence the works of Akira Yamaoka, where he also uses another song from Portishead's album, Dummy, with the song Sour Times, to sample the main theme of Silent Hill 1, Hometown. In Cafe 522, when you save your progress in the notebook for the first time, you can find a text that reads, "Someday, someone may experience these bizarre events. Hopefully, they will find my notes useful. This is a reference to a text found in Stephen King's 1980 novella, The Mist, which reads, "I'm going to leave these pages on the counter, and perhaps someday someone will find them and read them." The convenience store 8, located on Bachman Road, is a reference to 7-Eleven. The gas station, located near Balkan Church, Hell Gas Station, is a reference to Shell Gas Station. Hilariously, if you look closely at the logo, you can see the S in Shell scribbled out, along with a Shell logo next to it. On Block Street, you can find a garage door with the words Red Rum written in red, a reference to The Shining. Next to this is a pixelated graphic of the alcohol brand Jack Daniels. The building next to it has a pixelated graphic of the alcohol brand Jim Beam. Inside the Old Ridge Bridge control room are Playboy magazines on the table. Down the road on Block Street is a building called Boston Market, a reference to the fast food chain Boston Market. The newspaper stand located in the town of Silent Hill has a headline that reads, "Bill Skins 5th. This is a reference to the antagonist character Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. The newspaper in-game directly references a newspaper also seen in the film. At the end of Block Street is a store called Cut Right Chainsaws. This is a reference to another store seen in the film Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. On Bachman Road, the fast food chain Queen Burger is a reference to the fast food chain Burger King. In central Silent Hill, there are once again street names that directly reference authors. Creighton Street is a reference to Michael Creighton. Kuntz Street is a reference to Dean Kuntz. Saigon Street is a reference to American astronomer Carl Sagan. Simmons Street is a reference to Dan Simmons. The restaurant, A Movable Feast, is a reference to Ernest Hemingway's memoir of the same name. At the end of Simmons Street, you can find two posters that are advertisements for the 1976 film, Carrie. On the same street, you can also find the store, Mushnick's Florist. If you were to walk up closely to the storefront, you can find a sign with a name that reads Audrey Jr. These are all references to the 1960 film Little Shop of Horrors. At Movie Theater 3, the film Shoot references Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the film Crusher Dan references Die Hard 2. The store, Chinese Art Goods, when translated from Mandarin to English, reads Bruce Lee, a reference to the martial artist Bruce Lee. Inside the police station, you can find a poster next to the Central Silent Hill map. The poster is a reference to Exposition Universelle. The store, Andy's Bookstore, makes an appearance in Silent Hill Origins and Silent Hill 2 Remake. The drugstore, Green Pharmacy, also makes an appearance in Silent Hill 2 Remake. The fast food chain, Konami Burger, is a reference to the Japanese video game publisher, Konami. Konami Burger also makes an appearance in Silent Hill Origins. Inside Silent Hill Town Center, there's a retail store called Vestal Gigastore. This is a reference to the retail store Virgin Megastore. In the resort area, there are once again street names that are references to authors. Craig Street is a reference to Lillian Craig, a pen name that the author Kit Craig went by. Sanford Street is a reference to John Sanford. Norman's Motel is a reference to the fictional character Norman Bates, the main protagonist of the 1959 novel Psycho. Inside the building, Indian Runner, there are boxes with the name FedEx, a reference to FedEx. The fast food chain, Mecca Burger, is a reference to McDonald's. Silent Hill 3 is known to be a direct sequel to Silent Hill 1, therefore it would only be natural for direct references from Silent Hill 1 to reappear in Silent Hill 3. In Lakeside Amusement Park, the Magic Ice Cream House that appears in Silent Hill 1 also serves as a save point in Silent Hill 3. The Happy Carousel is used as a boss fight with Sybil Bennett, and in Silent Hill 3 with Memory of Alessa. Alessa's classroom appears in Nowhere in Silent Hill 1, and appears in the chapel in Silent Hill 3. Alessa's hospital room from Silent Hill 1 appeared originally in either Nightmare Alchemilla Hospital or Nowhere. Alessa's hospital room reappears in Silent Hill 3 in the chapel. Alessa's bedroom is used as the final save point in both Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 3 before their respective final boss fights. Finally, this fan before the final boss fight in Silent Hill 3 is previously seen in Silent Hill 1 and Nightmare Midwich Elementary School. There comes a time in a franchise when it reaches success to where it branches out of its comfort zone, adopting different formats to reach different audiences. The same can be said about the Silent Hill franchise. From its humble beginnings that started on consoles, it would eventually weave its way into media such as movies, comics, and crossovers with other franchises. It may be common knowledge by now, especially if you are a Silent Hill fan, but you'd be surprised by how vast this media expands beyond what we already know. And not just by how many adaptations this franchise has adopted, but also, unfortunately, has become lost to time. This in particular would be the lost media of Silent Hill. Over the years, there have been dedicated forums and websites that underwent the discovery of various media about Silent Hill that has slowly been uncovered, albeit partially found, which gave us a look at graphic novels, and even games that were unbeknownst to many. After some extensive research, I discovered some lost media about the franchise that I found very interesting and want to talk about today. With the release of Silent Hill 1 on the PlayStation in 1999, it was met with overwhelming success, with over 1 million units sold, and at the time, the highest selling Silent Hill title in the franchise to date. Because of this, Konami would capitalize on this and warranted more marketing with their newest bestseller and IP. Initially, there would have been a promotional tie-in graphic novel simply titled Silent Hill. The graphic novel would have featured 70 pages, serving as an adaptation of the game's story. The publisher, Com.X, a publisher based in Europe, would publish the graphic novel. However, plans ended up falling through due to unknown reasons. In a DeviantArt post on February 19, 2007, the interior artist, Neil Gouge, proceeded to post never-before-seen artwork from the graphic novel itself. According to Neil, he states that before he was employed with the publisher Com.X, he was working with two guys at their own design company. He eventually landed the job and was employed to design the Silent Hill graphic novel for the next 6 months as the company landed the rights from Konami. Neil would spend the next 6 months designing the 70 pages of the graphic novel and eventually finished it. However, as we already know, the graphic novel never saw the light of day. Years later in 2001, a user on the Lost Media Wiki would personally contact Neil about the graphic novel in hopes of getting his inquiries regarding the reason for the cancellation. According to the user, he states in an email with Neil that the entirety of the 70 pages from the graphic novel was lost due to the project being stored on a CD, which was unfortunately not properly preserved and lost over the years. Neil then exclaims that the reason for the cancellation of the graphic novel was due to intercompany politics between Konami and its European branch, resulting in a fallout. Interestingly enough, Konami not only initially commissioned an adaptation of a Silent Hill graphic novel, but also a special edition to be packaged alongside it with an adaptation of Silent Hill 2. Quote, "We were commissioned by Konami Europe, I believe, to produce the comic as promotional material for Silent Hill 2. It was going to be published separately and in a special edition of the game. Konami Japan also wanted to use the comic. Konami Europe, who had paid for the project, wanted some sort of payment for that use from Konami Japan. Konami Japan refused to pay any kind of fee, so Konami Europe said that they couldn't use it. At which point Konami Japan, who technically owned all copyrights on Silent Hill, then blocked Konami Europe from releasing the book under usage rights, not getting proper permission, etc. Neil Gouge. With this revelation, we would end up getting only 5 pages that were lost, but fortunately found thanks to the help of Neil Gouge posting his artwork of the graphic novel on DeviantArt. The first page is the product catalog, which provides proof of the comic's existence. The next page is an illustration of presumably the puppet nurses and puppet doctors seen in Alchemilla Hospital. Next are illustrations of the opening nightmare sequence, which sees Harry exploring the alleyway up until he meets the Grey Childs. The next page shows what looks like a flashback of the aftermath of Dahlia Gillespie's ritual performed on her daughter, Alyssa Gillespie, which shows the reader the Gillespie household in flames with nearby townspeople witnessing the events, alongside firefighters carrying out a burnt and charcoaled Alyssa. The final page shows Harry Mason and Michael Kaufman meeting for the first time in Alchemilla Hospital, where we see Harry pleading to Kaufman to not shoot at him as he isn't one of the monsters. As of this time, these are the only 5 pages uncovered in regards to the Silent Hill graphic novel. In 2006, members from Team Silent, Hiroyuki Owaku and Masahiro Ito, created 2 Silent Hill comics titled Cage of Cradle and Double Under Dusk. Both comics were exclusive to Japan and released digitally on cell phones for a limited time only, although there were talks to eventually release print releases in both America and Japan, but this unfortunately never reached fruition. The comic, Silent Hill Cage of Cradle, serves as a prequel to Silent Hill 1, following the main protagonist called Matthew, the boyfriend of Lisa Garland, who later appears in Silent Hill 1 as a major character. In terms of its plot, there isn't much of an understanding to go off of, as much of the comic is lost and what pages we do have been found and pieced together by fans, with a vague idea of its story. From what's been gathered, the story would have seen Matthew travel to Silent Hill to save Lisa from the Order, but due to the influence of Alessa's manifestations becoming active throughout the town, this sees Matthew transported to the other world. Matthew would witness the birth of Valtiel at some point and would abruptly die. Due to this, Lisa becomes enraged and blames Alessa for the death of Matthew, resulting in Lisa strangling Alessa. However, Valtiel would intervene and Lisa would die. She would later be reborn as a monster and wander the otherworld alone. The final chapter would end around the same time the opening sequence of Silent Hill 1 would take place. The comic, Double Under Dusk, follows Brian Dawson, a 40-year-old man who spends day-to-day in emotional and spiritual apathy ever since he lost his son, Ronnie. Brian eventually loses his job and divorces his wife. At some point, Brian meets Lindsay Crystal, a 20-year-old college student from Orano, Maine, who is majoring in folklore. Her studies bring her to Augusta to research a town called Silent Hill. As she puts it, a town where the dead return. This leads her to meet Brian in a library, to which Brian happens to recognize her as she closely resembles a woman he's seen in his nightmares. They decide to join together and both travel to Silent Hill, particularly to Lookalike Island, where much of the comic's location takes place. According to Masahiro Ito, he retains all the pages and original script for both Cage of Cradle and Double Under Dusk, although cannot release them to the public due to a contract with Konami. Because of this, the comics were eventually pulled from the now-defunct cell phone service to view the comics at the time, and have been partially lost. The only known images and references we have of these comics are posts from Masahiro Ito. After the release of Silent Hill 1, a lesser-known companion title would be released alongside it a couple of years later on the Game Boy Advance, exclusively in Japan, titled Silent Hill Play Novel. This was an adaptation of the original Silent Hill 1 on the PlayStation in terms of its narrative. However, there are a couple of substantial differences that separate it from its console counterpart, such as the gameplay adopting a visual novel format and the option to play as either Harry Mason or Sybil Bennett in their respective scenarios. However, the topic of interest that's most interesting in regards to this game is not necessarily the two main scenarios, but rather the DLC that was released afterward that's become quite a mystery over time. The third scenario featured a protagonist named Andy, a young boy who was a neighbor to both Harry and Cheryl Mason. Andy's story is broken into 4 chapters that correlate to 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. His first chapter, A Boy's Story Spring, would be released in May 2001 on the Game Boy Mobile Adapter. The Game Boy Mobile Adapter would be used to connect to the internet and download the data on the Game Boy Advance's internal memory. However, the flaw with this is that the downloaded chapter wouldn't be properly saved once the player powered off the console. Because of this, the chapters were never properly archived and the other chapters would become lost media. While we wouldn't exactly know what happens in the later chapters of Andy's scenario, we can get a valuable idea that much of his story would coincide with both Harry and Sybil's story. Cheryl Mason would also play a significantly larger role in his scenario. In Sybil's scenario, Andy makes a brief cameo when Sybil finds him drowning in an aqueduct, where she proceeds to save him. Afterward, Andy then proceeds to attack Cheryl and blames her for pushing him into the aqueduct. Sybil attempts to stop Andy and defuse the situation, but later becomes unconscious. With the Silent Hill Play Novel official guidebook, we can find a page that allows the player to see a couple of screenshots of in-game renders, alongside a story flowchart in Japanese text that elaborates in detail on the first chapter of Andy's scenario in spring. When translated into English, the scenario sees Andy as the Mason's neighbor who has a crush on Cheryl Mason. They attend the same school together. However, Andy hasn't mustered the courage to express his feelings for her. When Andy decides to finally profess his feelings to Cheryl, both Harry and Cheryl happen to travel to Silent Hill, which sees Andy sneak into the back of Harry's Jeep to hitch a ride with them. After Harry's crash and Cheryl's disappearance, Andy wanders into Silent Hill alone to find her. The spring chapter has 2 endings. The first ending sees Andy staring into a large chasm, fearing that Cheryl fell into it and would be unable to help her. He then hears someone approaching him, presumably Alessa Gillespie, but he cannot move to see who it is as his body is unable to move to see who is behind him. In the second ending, Andy reaches the chasm to lament about Cheryl falling into it. He then proceeds to step forward and fall into the chasm, unable to move once he falls to the bottom. As of this point in time, we have no further information about Andy's scenario, and that is the lost media of Silent Hill. It's quite amazing how such media like this has been slowly uncovered over the years thanks to hard work and dedication to the Silent Hill community, that allows us to not only see such content that is obscure and a rarity to witness, but also properly preserved and archived for years to come, at least what's left of it. It's truly unfortunate that most of this media is partially lost and incomplete. But hopefully, as we move forward, there's that small glimmer of hope that we can see full restoration of this content one day. Until then, I guess we have to wait and see. While exploring Alchemilla Hospital, Harry finds a red liquid in the director's office. This red liquid is known as a Glophatus. According to the Kabbalah, a Jewish text of mystical religious interpretations within Judaism, The name is derived from a herb grown in the Arabian desert, which is said to grant the power to dispel demonic forces and grant supernatural immunity to those who possess the item. Aglaophytus is said to be connected to the Paeonia, a European flowering plant found in the mountains of southern Europe. Paeonia was a herb used for medicinal purposes. The Greek doctor, Dioscorides, named Aglaophytus as a member of the Paeoni family, and speculated that Aglaophytus served as the main source. Aglaophytus serves as an integral item to obtain the Good Plus ending. In a cutscene between Harry and Dahlia, she states that their meeting was fate as it was foretold by gyromancy. While it's become a meme over the years, the saying gyromancy is a ritualistic method where someone spins or walks around the circumference of a circle drawn on the ground, with letters from the alphabet inscribed around the circumference. The ritual performance is based on the letters where the person stumbles, falls, or lands. The purpose of practicing this ritualistic performance is intended to create a random or altered state of consciousness to aid in predicting the future. The Floros is an important contraption-like device that is possessed by Dahlia Gillespie, later passed down to Harry. Dahlia refers to the Floros as a cage of peace and counteracting with the underworld. On the surface, this is meant to conceal demonic forces, but in actuality, it's used as Dahlia's secret trump card, which is meant to dispel Lessa of her telekinesis powers. In occult teachings, Floros is derived as the Great Duke of Hell, seen as a seeker of truth in the past, present, and future. However, he also may deceive and lie. Furthermore, unless he is commanded into a magic triangle, only then he will speak the truth. Floros also later appears in the occult work, The Lesser Key of Solomon, seen as one of the 72 demons that appear in the Leamington, a book of magic said to have been compiled from the writings of King Solomon of Israel. Before Alessa's capture by her mother, Dahlia falsely claims to Harry that the Mark of Samael was a ritual that Alessa was orchestrating to cause annihilation to the town, as a means of not only putting an end to the cult, but also committing ritualistic suicide. While this is partially true, Dahlia misleads Harry by fabricating the Mark of Samael, rather than stating the truth, which is the seal of Metatron. In reality, the Mark of Samael is nothing but mere fodder and serves no significance to the Order, seen merely as a talisman. However, this is up for debate. In Jewish mythology, Metatron serves as an angel standing close to God as a mediator of humanity. As God's scribe, Metatron records all human and divine choices, granting him immense knowledge and wisdom. This knowledge makes him a powerful figure, able to use it for manipulation and control. Samael, depicted as an angel of death, is one of these 7 archangels who serves as the king of all demons, loosely equating to that of Satan in some cultures, such as Jewish mysticism. Interestingly, in the official documentation, Lost Memories Silent Hill Chronicle, according to the Kabbalah, the angels Metatron and Samael originally shared the same existence, implying that they both serve under the function of the Seal of Metatron. While the Seal of Metatron is seen as nothing more than a talisman for the Order, it contradicts those claims as Alessa planned to use this ritualistic occult practice by inscribing 5 Seal of Metatron symbols throughout Old Silent Hill, Central Silent Hill, and the resort area. These 5 symbols are inscribed at Midwich Elementary School, Alchemilla Hospital, Green Line Antique Shop, Lakeside Lighthouse, and finally, Lakeside Amusement Park. Had Alessa become successful in this ritual, she likely would have caused complete annihilation to the town in an attempt to not only end the cult itself, but rather, to end her life. To purge the embryo god maturing inside of her. This is seen as Alessa's insurance policy. Due to the ritual, Dahlia performed years ago on Alessa, casting a spell on her which made her susceptible to the forces and power of the god. The god would protect Alessa from harm or even self-inflicted harm upon her. Throughout the game, Harry will encounter odd and abrupt shifts between the day and night cycles. In one instance, Harry will be seen roaming the town of Old Silent Hill, with fog obscuring his path, while snow drops silently on the pavement. After exiting through a back door, Harry then sees a sudden shift from the moody atmosphere of the day to a haunting and eerie presence of the night, with silence in its ambience. According to the official Silent Hill guidebook, these changes occur because there's a cycle in the world of Alessa's nightmares that corrupts the town. For context, a person normally repeats what is called REM sleep and non-REM sleep in regular cycles while they're sleeping. This process coincides with the supernatural element in Silent Hill through the otherworld as it approaches a deeper cycle of sleep. The otherworld is perceived as a supernatural phenomenon in which light is dissipated and the world shifts to an even deeper nightmare as the cycle shifts again. Furthermore, it isn't that one is reality and one is a dream, but rather, neither is reality. Incidentally, The reason the other world takes on such an ominous aspect is due to Les's upbringing. This manifestation of her trauma and her nightmares twisted and amplified these internalized thoughts of her pain and suffering. Inside Alchemilla Hospital, Harry finds a basement room with a handful of medical drugs that he assumes are for patients. However, Harry has his reservations regarding said drugs as he notices something odd with a certain group of manufactured drugs that are distributed to patients. Harry's concerns would be correct, as the drug in question is called PTV. PTV is an illegally distributed drug manufactured by Michael Kaufman, the director of Alchemilla Hospital. Kaufman would elicit this drug by using his position at Alchemilla Hospital to distribute these drugs to local pharmacies in the town of Silent Hill. This illegal practice of the PTV drug would eventually go mainstream, as the mayor would vocalize these concerns publicly, and a police officer, Officer Gucci, would investigate this illegal activity. The Order would catch wind of this and have members, presumably Kaufman, take care of this matter, as both of these public figures would end up deceased suddenly. It's speculated that PTV is manufactured by the ingredient White Claudia, derived from the plant that grows near water sources in the resort town of Silent Hill. Its seeds contain hallucinogenic properties that have been used in the cult's ritualistic ceremonies and practices. An idea of how this drug affected the user would be with Lisa Garland. Lisa was forcefully subjected to taking the drug and gaining an addiction to it, which had Kaufman use this as leverage to blackmail her into doing illegal work for him. Lisa would describe such hallucinogenic effects such as seeing the room filled with insects despite her needing to throw up but cannot, leaving only bile to come out of her vomit, or seeing blood and pus pour out the water faucet of the sink. An accomplice in Kaufman's illegal distribution of the drug PTV, Norman Young uses Norman's motel, to likely use as a front to allow Kaufman to conduct dealings and transportation of PTV, as a means of not getting caught and likely as an alibi in case he is questioned. At some point, Norman Young would get cold feet and decide to quit after realizing his sudden conscious thoughts of the legal work he is committing with Kaufman. Not much else is known about Norman Young, but it's speculated that he eventually did end up leaving this legal work behind. In Midwich Elementary School, Harry can find notes documented by a teacher named Kay Gordon, Leslie Gillespie's homeroom teacher. Kay Gordon would take notice of Leslie Gillespie's bullying from her local classmates, but also speculate that her mother was physically abusing her. This would escalate to where Kay Gordon devised whether she should take accountability and likely alert Child Protective Services or the police of Alessa's abuse. However, much to Alessa's dismay, Gordon would detract from helping her as she would grow scared of the Order's position and likely silencing her, and rather just had to wait things out. Not much is known about what happens to Kay Gordon after these events. It's speculated that she was potentially murdered by the Order, as Harry can find a massive amount of blood covering the garage door of a house under the name Kay Gordon. However, this is mere speculation. Before the release of Silent Hill, the first publicly accessible demo was at E3 1998. In a video by YouTube user Gyromancy, we see a short 30-second segment of Konami marketing manager Joe Sloan describing the synopsis of Silent Hill whilst showing gameplay of Harry roaming the back alleys during the opening sequence. In a second video, we see a very interesting graphic of the early design of the Silent Hill logo, which looks drastically different from the finalized logo, alongside more footage of Harry roaming the dark-filled hallways of Midwich Elementary School, cautiously as he has his handgun equipped. The Gillespie household is seen originally in the intro FMV very briefly, located on the outskirts of Silent Hill. The Gillespie house is based on a famous painting titled Christina's World, depicting a woman lying on a grassy, barren field looking up at the house on the horizon. This painting is based on the real-world Olsen house in Cushing, Maine. While this is speculative, it's important to note how the woman in this painting parallels Alessa Gillespie when it comes to their physical limitations that bear resemblance. While different in terms of context, the woman, Anna Christina Olsen, is depicted as suffering from a degenerative muscle disease. According to the artist, Andrew Wyeth, he was inspired by Anna's unique determination in navigating her world despite her disabilities. This parallels Alessa Gillespie, a girl who, unfortunately, was subjected to forced impregnation and mutilation through a tragic accident as a byproduct of a ritual that saw her burned and immobilized for 7 long years. Despite her disabilities, she garnered the determination to preserve the essence of that innocence through the byproduct of splitting her soul in half, producing Cheryl Mason. There are a couple of hidden button combinations. For example, you can save anywhere at any point during the game. To do this, while on the pause screen with the pause text visible, and then press and hold the following: D-pad left, plus left stick left, plus right stick left, plus L1, plus L2, plus L3. If done correctly, the save menu will be brought up so you can save the game. Another hidden button combination is soft reset. To do this, you must input the following button combination: L1 plus L2 plus R1 plus R2 plus start plus select. This will soft reset the game back to the main menu. Silent Hill, or formerly known in kanji, Saranto Hiru, is officially published by Konami Novels as a Japan-only novel adaptation of Silent Hill. Written by Sadamu Yamashita, the novel serves as a companion piece that gives a bit more fleshed out development to the characters, alongside new illustrations by Masahiro Ito. While the novel is only localized in Japan, fans have successfully translated it unofficially, such as Winter, who unofficially localized a full English translation of the Silent Hill official novel to completion, which you can read yourself via a PDF document. Silent Hill DX is a Japan-only mobile game adapting Silent Hill for the FOMA 90X series 3G mobile phone. The game consists of 3 chapters. At the end of each chapter, the player is given a password that is needed to progress to the next chapter. Each chapter takes place in a different location, in which Harry visits in his search for Cheryl. These following locations are Midwich Elementary School, Alchemilla Hospital, and Otherworld. There is a supported battle system that is based on random encounters. Similar to an RPG, Harry and the monsters take turns omitting actions in a turn-based combat system. Furthermore, the gameplay is point and click, allowing the player to navigate the world and interact with the environment, along with an item and map system. The Konami Justifier is a light gun peripheral accessory released on multiple home consoles, such as the Sega Genesis, SNES, and PlayStation, that are supported by specific games that have the peripheral as an add-on. Interestingly, the Konami Justifier served as inspiration for the Hyper Blaster, and if the light gun peripheral is connected to the second controller port of the PlayStation, the player will instantly unlock the Hyper Blaster in-game, as it will appear in the inventory upon starting the game in a New Game Plus playthrough. In the early days of the internet, one of the forums would engage in conversation about supposedly rumored endings that were proposed to have a secret ambulance ending. As the rumor goes, some users conversed about the myth of claiming to have received a secret ambulance ending. This rumor would circulate amongst the fandom and would grow large enough to where a video on YouTube one day would abruptly appear out of nowhere. This video would go into detail on how to achieve the secret ambulance ending. According to the video, the player would need to finish the game on hard difficulty with at least a 9 out of 10 star ranking, allowing the player in the next playthrough to unlock the secret 5th ending. Upon starting your 5th playthrough, you would have to collect the bottle of distilled water and the glucose in the Midwich Elementary School, items that were originally unobtainable before. Upon acquiring these items, Harry would then have to construct an explosive to blow open the gate to the ambulance bay in Alchemilla Hospital. Once done, Harry then needs to find an oil can to use on the engine at the Hal gas station in Old Silent Hill. Finally, once the engine is acquired, Harry then places the engine in the ambulance. Once installed, Harry then would drive off in the ambulance to escape Silent Hill. Now, obviously, this secret ambulance ending is completely false and likely a harmless urban legend developed by some users in the fandom. In the opening FMV, Harry and Cheryl are seen driving to Silent Hill. In this scene, Cheryl is clutching onto her sketchbook called Drawing Block. Upon completing the game, in the same opening FMV cutscene, Cheryl's sketchbook is now titled Calger Dinok. As to why this oddity happened so suddenly is unknown. It can be assumed that this is a mistranslation or spelling error from Team Silent when it came to translating English from Japanese that went unnoticed during development. It's possible to defeat the final boss, Incubus, without having to deal damage. If the player were to enter the final boss fight without any ammunition for their firearms, such as the handgun, shotgun, or rifle, then the assumption is that they'd be stun-locked and incapable of defeating Incubus, due to the melee weapons lacking range to register the hitbox to deal damage to the Incubus. However, it seems that Team Silent knew about this issue and had a failsafe implemented into the game's coding to recognize this predicament. If the player enters the boss fight without ammunition, the game will then count down from a timer for an unspecified amount of time, before the Incubus is defeated by default. It's unknown how long the timer takes when it comes to waiting out the final boss, but it can be conceived that it works differently upon each difficulty. For example, on easy, it takes 2 minutes, on normal, 4 minutes, and on hard, 6 minutes. However, this is just an estimate, and the vitality behind the statement is up for debate, as again, there's no definitive answer. Regardless, once the timer ends, the Incubus will be defeated. While Harry goes under the alias of Harry Mason, his official legal name is Harold Mason. This is officialized in official guidebooks such as Lost Memories Silent Hill Chronicle on page 24 in the Silent Hill character commentary section. This reveals Harry's full legal name as Harold Harry Mason. Furthering this rabbit hole is the creator's comment revealing that Harry's name was originally Humbert Mason. This was quickly scrapped, however, due to the obscurity of this name being uncommon amongst an English audience. There are multiple unused animations unique to Harry Mason. An unused idle animation initially saw Harry fold and cross his arms as he waits patiently, shifting his body in direction to his left and his right. Interestingly, this idle animation is also active when Harry holsters a weapon. In this unused animation, Harry pulls out his hand and holds out his hand in front of him as he shifts his arms side to side to his left and his right. It can be assumed that this unused animation was repurposed for Harry equipping his lighter, as this animation is reminiscent of the Nightmare sequence where he uses his lighter in a similar animated action. It also looks similar in his animation when he equips the Floros. Another unused idle animation shows Harry standing idle as he shifts his feet side to side. This is similar to his final idle animation, where he similarly stands idle, but is less emotive in his movement. This unused animation shows Harry in a battle stance where he's seen equipping a melee weapon, presumably the katana, whilst simultaneously emitting an action where he swings a weapon downwards. This possibly would have been purposed as a unique animation for the katana when dealing damage to a monster. While minor, Harry's death animation was more dramatic as he falls downwards to his knees as his body goes limp. In the final animation, this was slightly revised as it appears more realistic and seamless, as Harry falls to his knees and dies. In this unused animation of Harry moving sideways, initially saw him jumping side to side to his left and his right. This would later be revised to show Harry running sideways instead of jumping. There originally were supposed to be feel meters for the chainsaw and rock drill, as this image was uncovered on a Brady game strategy guide. As far as I'm concerned, I couldn't find any other relevant information that acknowledges feel meters that could have potentially been seen in demos, review copies, or data mining the game files. This is the only known documented reference that displays this unique feature during the early stages of presumably development. This likely was unused and scrapped due to this mechanic restricting prolonged use on both the chainsaw and rock drill respectively, which possibly was frowned upon during playtesting and instead was made to use without repercussions. One of the darker aspects of Silent Hill that is still discussed till this day, which may be often misinterpreted, is Alessa's pregnancy. While never talked about directly in explicit detail, it's implied during this flashback sequence of Dahlia, Kaufman, and two unnamed doctors in the basement where they're hiding Alessa's mutilated body. In the transcript, while there is dismay over the initial belief that the ritual was a failure, Dahlia reassures them that the ritual was technically a success, as Alessa holds the embryonic fetus of God inside of her. However, Alessa, in a last-ditch attempt, halted the completion of this ritual by splitting her soul in two, which prevents the birth of the Order's God. With this context, this confirms previous implications that Alessa was forcefully impregnated. The common misconception is that Alessa was sexually assaulted by another person, but this is obviously not the case, as the pregnancy alludes to this being supernatural through occult and dark practices, which were conducted by Dahlia, her own mother. Before Alessa's pregnancy, the Order would indoctrinate young women who were ignorant of the Order's true intentions, unaware of the malicious and evil intent of using them as sacrificial offerings to have them installed as a potential surrogate mother to birth their god. Dahlia originally had the intentions of indoctrinating her daughter as her underling, who would, much like her, practice the occult teachings. But Dahlia, in an impulsive effort, decided to use her 7-year-old daughter in a ritual to forcibly impregnate her through supernatural means. And nowhere, on the 3rd floor, Harry will find an altar which has puzzles that need to be solved to access both respective doors to the left and the right. On the door to the right, there's a room that is a reconstruction of Dr. Kaufman's office in Alchemilla Hospital. Inside this room, Harry can find a memo on White Claudia, which alludes to the idea that this plant was used and manufactured to create the hallucinogenic effects of the PTV drug, which was illegally sold on the black market under Kaufman. However, what is of interest is a missing newspaper memo that is not found in the US version and the initial Japanese version of Silent Hill. Interestingly, the newspaper memo titled "Newspaper from 7 years ago" was implemented into the PAL version of Silent Hill upon its release without issue. However, upon its revision, the revised Japanese version re-implemented the missing newspaper memo. Until this day, the only version that does not contain this missing newspaper memo is the US version. As to why this memo was seen as missing in the game's memory is due to a bug resulting in incorrect flags being written into the memory and save game files in these previous versions. although this was fixed upon re-releases of the European and Japanese versions of Silent Hill. The conditions for unlocking this newspaper memo are still unknown to this day, as it appears to be at random, but it is concluded that all memos must be read prior before unlocking the memo of newspaper from 7 years ago. In this memo, it loosely mentions the illegal practices of the drug PTV, elicited by its unknown dealers who have yet to still be found, and suspicious deaths of notable figures such as the mayor, who was heavily against the illegal practices of this drug, and a police officer named Officer Gucci, who investigated this underground operation until he died suddenly of heart failure. Further in this newspaper memo, Harry finds a brief segment covering the Gillespie house fires that burned down 6 other houses, and unless his body was discovered in the aftermath, assumed to be diseased, it was assumed by investigators that the fire was started in the basement or the boiler room of the Gillespie house. But in reality, this was likely due to the ritual conducted by Dahlia Gillespie, resulting in this tragedy. The initial first trailer of Silent Hill, upon its reveal, was supposed to have a different soundtrack altogether that went unused as opposed to the one seen in the final version of the game. The final version would have the track She used instead. The original track, however, was supposedly titled Azusa One Go, which went unused. However, Azusa One Go would be preserved in the Silent Hill Soundsbox soundtrack. The Mist refers to American novelist Stephen King and his previous work on the novella The Mist, published in 1980. In the novella, the plot centers around a small town in Bridgeton, Maine, of a group of people stuck inside a supermarket who are suddenly shrouded in a dense fog with otherworldly creatures. The protagonist, David Drayton, takes refuge inside the supermarket alongside his son, whilst trying to assess the conflict with other survivors' growing aggression and fear of the monsters in the mist. Interestingly, Stephen King addresses the themes of the mist to be adopted from man-made fears and religious fundamentalism. With this context, one can point out there are certain parallels between the mist and Silent Hill, such as the fog engulfing a small town, nightmarish delusions that are manifested through otherworldly creatures, and the allusions to religious imagery and practices conducted to filter your intentions. Now, this may come off as nothing more than a mere coincidence. However, this would be confirmed in an interview with Akira Yamaoka on the website Music Japan Plus. In this interview, Akira Yamaoka reveals that around the time Resident Evil was released, he was a part of Team Silent, and they were eager to adopt a similar idea to the likes of Resident Evil, but wanted to do something incredibly unique and different to establish their own identity. This led to the idea of Stephen King's The Mist as a source of inspiration for adapting the atmosphere of a foggy setting. Yamaoka clarifies that this was not only implemented as a creative decision for the sake of portraying a gloomy and ominous atmosphere, but also in a technical sense, as the fog was creatively used to hide the textures loading, due to the limitations of the PlayStation's memory. In Silent Hill 1, there are 5 endings, and one of these endings the player can receive, which likely will be the first ending most new-time players receive, is the bad ending. To accomplish the bad ending, the player must not forgo Kaufman's side quest by failing to acquire the plastic bottle found in the kitchen, and combining it with the red liquid, creating a Galapagos, found in the director's office of Alcamilla Hospital respectively. Furthermore, if Harry doesn't have the Galapagos with him, then he'd be forced to kill Sybil Bennett as a result. By meeting these requirements, the player will achieve the bad ending. In this bad ending, Lassa doesn't get the incubus exercise from her, and instead is seen as the incubator, which Harry is forced to kill. In doing so, he does successfully kill Lassa, but doesn't receive the reincarnation of Cheryl, failing to save Cheryl and stopping the Order from birthing God. In a post-credits scene, Harry's seen deceased in the driver's seat of his car, implying that the bad ending is a dream sequence that was all in Harry's head as he was slowly dying from the result of the car crash. While the bad ending isn't necessarily canon, as the good ending or good plus ending is considered to be the true canon ending due to the events of Silent Hill 3 being a direct sequel, the bad ending could be considered canon in the context of Silent Hill Shattered Memories. Silent Hill Shattered Memories is set in an alternate universe with the same cast as Silent Hill 1, albeit in a different context. In this alternate universe, we see Harry trying to find Cheryl, similarly to the events of Silent Hill 1. The ending of Silent Hill Shattered Memories reveals that Harry died upon impact while driving Cheryl when she was younger. Cheryl would be the sole survivor and suffer from years of trauma due to her survivor's guilt. The Harry we see playing throughout the game would be a manifestation of an idealized version of Harry Mason, projected from Cheryl Mason's memories of her father as a coping mechanism to manage her trauma of her father's death. The writer and lead designer of Silent Hill, Shattered Memories, Sam Barlow, revealed in an interview with Nintendo Life in November 2022 that he disliked Silent Hill 3 with a continuation of Harry and Cheryl's story and the bad ending of Silent Hill 1. This was due to the idea of the player feeling dismayed and soured of not only receiving the bad ending as their first ending, but also not knowing of the possibility of achieving other endings, as it's never directly addressed to the player. Barlow saw this and was displeased, and instead wanted to address this issue and fix this, by using this as a backdrop to tell the story of Silent Hill, Shattered Memories, to convey a heartfelt yet bittersweet ending to this premise.